I'm a 31-year-old Scottish designer, and last November I spent 2 weeks alone in an Airbnb in Recife. I wasn't on vacation. I wasn't trying to relax. I had just quit my job in Edinburgh after 10 years and needed a place where I could think, disappear, and maybe start something new. A friend who'd spent time in Brazil said Recife was underrated, vibrant, historic, full of inspiration. I chose a rental in the old part of the city, Recife Antigo, a narrow cobbled street with pastel buildings and faded murals. The listing showed an airy loft on the second floor of a colonial house, with high ceilings, antique furniture, and a view of the street below. It looked charming, but in person, the charm was strange. The building smelled of wet wood and salt. The front door had no number, just peeling paint and a rusted bell that didn't ring. Inside, the staircase creaked like it was trying to warn me of something. The apartment had a long, narrow hallway with a window that didn't open and shutters that barely closed. The bed was firm, the sheets stiff, and there was an old freestanding mirror in the corner of the bedroom. Tall, curved at the top, with a frame that had cracked on one side and been glued back together. You could barely tell. But I noticed. There was no television, just a fan, a desk, and a single overhead light with a soft flicker I didn't immediately pay attention to. The first night I stayed up late, scrolling through emails, watching the street from the window. Recife was louder than I expected. Music from the bars, someone laughing too loud, motorcycles passing at random hours. But the apartment was sealed in silence. Almost like it had no connection to the outside. Around 2 a.m. I turned off the lights and lay down, trying to adjust to the heat. The fan rattled a little, and the wooden floor creaked once as it settled. Then, just as I was drifting off, I heard something. Not from outside. From inside the room. A faint click, like a fingernail tapping glass. I sat up slowly, eyes adjusting. The apartment was dark, except for a sliver of streetlight slipping in through the shutters. The mirror in the corner was facing the bed. I hadn't realized it had been moved. And in the reflection, I thought I saw the shutters behind me still wide open. But when I turned around, they were closed. I woke up twice that night. The first time it was just the heat. The fan had stopped spinning and the room felt heavy, like the air had thickened. I got up, flipped the switch, and stood for a second staring at the shutters, still closed. The mirror was facing the bed again. I could have sworn it had been at an angle before, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I hadn't noticed. I turned it toward the corner and went back to sleep. The second time, I woke up for no reason at all. No sound, no dream, just the feeling of not being alone. I stayed still, listening. No traffic, no music, not even the fan this time. Just silence, complete and tight, like a held breath. Then I noticed the light. The shutters weren't closed anymore. A narrow line of light was cutting across the wall, reaching toward the bed. I sat up, confused, and walked to the window. The latch was still in place, locked. But the shutters were parted just enough for the light to come through. I hadn't opened them. I closed them carefully, turned the latch again, and checked the door, the hallway, even the floor under the bed. Nothing. No sign of a break-in, no noise, just the low, constant hum of silence. As I stepped back into the bedroom, I stopped. The mirror. It was tilted again, ever so slightly, not enough to notice unless you were looking for it. But now it reflected part of the hallway behind me. Except the hallway was dark, and I had left the light on. I turned, confused. The hallway light was still on, bright yellow, flickering like always. But in the mirror it was completely black. No light, no shape, just a hallway swallowed by shadow. And in the very center of that darkness, I thought I saw something move. Just a ripple, a blur, like someone walking slowly past the door. But when I turned around again, the hallway was empty. The next morning I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. I couldn't stop thinking about the mirror, the way the light had vanished in the reflection, the shape that moved behind me. I tried to convince myself it had been a trick of the eyes, exhaustion, heat, too much wine the night before. But I knew what I saw. I spent most of the day walking around Recife Antigo, hoping to clear my head. The streets were bright, chaotic, alive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind in that apartment. Or maybe it had stayed with me. When I returned in the late afternoon, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A second door. It was tucked between the kitchen and the hallway, painted the same color as the wall, with a small old-fashioned keyhole but no handle. I had assumed it was a closet or part of the structure, but now it looked different. More like a door someone had tried to forget. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Then I tapped it lightly, and it echoed. Hollow, deeper than it should have been. I'd tried to pull it, push it, even wedge a coin into the keyhole. Nothing, locked tight. Later that night, I set my phone to record audio and placed it on the desk near the mirror, just to prove to myself there was nothing to hear. No breathing, no footsteps, no voice. I left the light on in the hallway and got into bed. Around 3 a.m. I woke up to silence again. But this time, it felt heavier, like the silence itself had weight. I turned to look at the desk. My phone screen was lit. Not flashing, not receiving a call. Recording. I hadn't touched it. I got up, walked to the desk, and stopped. The mirror was facing the locked door now. Turned perfectly toward it, as if something had adjusted the angle. And behind the mirror, just barely visible in the reflection, the locked door was open. Only in the mirror. I didn't go near the mirror again that night. I turned it toward the wall, unplugged the fan, and sat on the floor with my back against the bed, holding the phone. I didn't check the recording. I didn't want to know what it had caught. For the first time since arriving in Recife, I felt like the apartment wasn't just empty. It was waiting. The next day, I contacted the Airbnb host. I asked if there was a closet or storage space near the kitchen. He replied an hour later, "No, just the wall. That's the original layout." I sent a photo of the door. He didn't respond. That night it rained. Heavy, sudden, tropical. The kind of rain that drowns all other sounds. I turned off the lights and lay on the bed, listening to it hit the shutters, until it stopped. Abruptly, like someone had turned it off. I sat up. The room was silent again. No thunder, no dripping, just nothing. Then, from the direction of the kitchen, I heard a voice. Not loud, not speaking, just breathing. Slow, raspy, almost rhythmic, like someone struggling to stay calm. I held my breath and focused. It wasn't coming from the hallway or the window. It was behind the locked door. I got up barefoot, walked slowly across the apartment, and stopped in front of it. The breathing continued. I leaned closer. The air near the door was cold, much colder than the rest of the apartment. It didn't make sense. I touched the wood. It felt damp, like someone had been pressing their hand against it from the other side. Then, without thinking, I whispered, "Hello?" The breathing stopped. For several seconds, there was nothing, not even the fan. Then I heard it. A whisper from behind the door. It said my name. I left the apartment before sunrise. Didn't check out. Didn't message the host. I packed in 10 minutes, shoved everything into my suitcase, and left the keys on the table. I didn't look back. The hallway was still. The door to the kitchen was shut again. The mirror, I left it where it was, facing the wall. I spent the rest of the week in a hostel near Boa Viagem. Bright, loud, modern, everything the Airbnb wasn't. I didn't sleep well, but at least there were people around. Movement, sound, normal things. I tried to listen to the audio file from that night, but it was gone. The app said there had never been a recording, just a timestamp, 3:17. That's it. I flew back to Scotland 2 days earlier than planned. Told myself I'd never rent another Airbnb again. Told my friends it was just a bad experience, nothing serious. I almost believed it, until last week. I was in my flat, alone, finishing a freelance project, when the power went out. Nothing unusual, just a quick flicker, then darkness. I got up to check the fuse box and walked past the mirror in my hallway. And for a moment, just a split second, I saw it again. The same mirror, same crack on the right side. Only this time, it was showing a door that doesn't exist in my flat. A small door, painted the same color as the wall. And just before the lights came back on, I swear I heard it, the sound of someone breathing. I'm a 32-year-old video editor from Canada, and last summer I spent 10 days alone in an Airbnb in Salvador. It wasn't my first time in Brazil, but it was the first time I had chosen to stay somewhere that wasn't a hotel or part of a work trip. I had just wrapped a long, chaotic freelance project, and I needed to disappear. Not to travel, not to explore, just to stop. I picked Salvador because I had been once before, years ago. I remembered the noise, the music, the energy, but also the silence, the alleys at dusk, the weight of the air. Something about it always felt older than it looked. The Airbnb was a restored colonial house in the historic center near Pelourinho. From the outside, it looked small, white facade, wooden shutters, a wrought iron gate covered in rust and green vines. But inside it opened up. There were high ceilings, crooked tile floors, and walls painted in warm yellow, now chipped and uneven in places. I liked it. It felt forgotten, like a space that had survived time by not being noticed. The bedroom was simple. Wooden bed, 2 windows that faced a narrow alley, and above the bed, 4 paintings. They were framed identically, thin dark wood with golden trim, and spaced evenly on the wall. At first glance, they looked like landscapes or maybe memories, but the longer I stared, the less I understood what they were supposed to show. One was fog, just fog, thick, gray with a faint shape at the center. Another showed a long corridor with a flickering light in the distance, like an old building hallway. The third looked like a stairwell, but without context, steps going up into black. And the last, I still don't know. It might have been an alley, but it ended too suddenly. None of them had titles. None of them made sense. I remember thinking they were too quiet, not peaceful, silent, like they were hiding something. I laughed it off. The first night, I didn't sleep much. It was hot. The fan kept ticking, the curtains moved even with the windows closed, and at one point I heard what sounded like footsteps above me, slow and deliberate. But I was on the top floor. The second night was better. I stayed on the balcony most of the evening, trying to forget the paintings. But every time I went back inside, I felt them behind me, watching, not directly, not like eyes, just aware. And by the third morning, one of them had changed. I spent most of that morning trying to convince myself I had misremembered the painting. Maybe the door had always been there. Maybe it was a trick of light, a shift in how I was seeing things. I looked at the photo I'd taken on the first day. It was blurry, tilted, no real reference. My brain kept trying to fill the blanks. But the doubt stayed. Each time I passed the painting, I stared a little longer. The door seemed just a bit more open. And the figure in the hallway? It wasn't just a shape anymore. It had shoulders, one arm slightly back, like it had been mid-step. I told myself I was being paranoid, burned out, sleep-deprived. But I couldn't help it. The apartment was too quiet during the day, too still. The windows let in heat but not sound, and the ceiling fan made this constant low hum that started to feel mechanical, like background noise meant to hide something else. That afternoon, I decided to move the paintings. Not because I was scared, or that's what I told myself. I just didn't want to keep looking at them every time I got up from bed. So I took them down one by one and leaned them against the wall. The backs of the frames were dusty. The nails came out too easily, as if they had been removed before. Recently, I wiped the wall, rehung the paintings in a different order, random, no logic to it, just so they'd feel new, less familiar. And for a while, I felt better. I made coffee, read on the balcony, let the late afternoon heat slow everything down. But as the sun dipped behind the buildings, I started to feel it again, that pressure in the room. Not sound, not presence. Anticipation. Like the space was holding its breath. That night, the power went out for a moment. Just a flicker, a few seconds. Everything blinked off, then came back. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Listening, I kept the lights on. All of them. When I woke up the next morning, something had changed again. But it wasn't the hallway this time. It was the staircase. Where before there had been only shadow, now there was light. Soft, yellow, flickering like an old lamp. And at the top of the stairs, just at the edge of the glow, something was waiting. A hand, thin, pale, resting gently on the railing. I walked closer to the frame and saw that the painting had shifted slightly in its mount, tilted just to the left, like someone had touched it. By the fifth day, I stopped pretending it was in my head. I had taken photos, compared angles, checked shadows. Nothing lined up. Each morning, one detail had changed. Slight, careful, quiet. A frame tilted, a door slightly more open, a new shadow where there wasn't one before. It was like someone or something was building a story, one slow brushstroke at a time. The painting of the hallway now showed a pair of feet, bare, pale, toes turned inward, standing just inside the open door. The figure wasn't just present anymore, it had entered. In the staircase painting, that pale hand I saw yesterday now gripped the railing tighter. There was tension in it. And above the staircase, the light was stronger, almost beckoning. The fog painting had changed too. The window in its center, once only a blur, now showed the outline of something beyond it. Not a person, not a place, just depth. Like the painting was no longer flat. I tried to keep calm, to stay logical. But the apartment felt different now. The walls seemed closer, the light harsher in some corners, darker in others. I caught myself avoiding certain spots, walking around the edge of the living room instead of through it, sleeping with one light on, keeping the bedroom door open. And I kept checking the paintings, every hour, every glance. I had started tracking them with my phone, making small notes, but no photo captured what I saw in person. The changes never showed up when I tried to explain them. That night I gave up on the notes. I sat across from the wall and stared at all four. I tried to find meaning. Fog, alley, hallway, staircase. I rearranged them again, not randomly this time. I lined them up according to what I remembered changing first. And as soon as I did, I saw it. A path. From far away into something. From confusion into presence. The fog came first, distant and shapeless. Then the alley, narrow and winding with no end in sight. Then the hallway, a point of entry. And finally the staircase, the destination. It wasn't art. It was a sequence, a route, and something was following it. I didn't sleep that night. I left all the lights on and stayed seated at the foot of the bed, watching the paintings. I thought if I stared long enough, they wouldn't move. I thought maybe the changes only happened when I wasn't looking. But around 4 a.m. I must have blinked. Just once? When I opened my eyes, the hallway painting had changed. The door was now wide open. The figure was gone. And in the staircase, there were two hands on the railing. I didn't go outside that day. The sun was sharp, but the apartment was dim. Light came through the shutters in strange angles, as if the windows were filtering time instead of sun. I kept walking from room to room, trying to find something, anything, that made me feel like I was still in control. But everything felt slightly off. The fan made a new clicking sound. The fridge hummed longer than usual. The tiles felt uneven under my feet, like they had shifted overnight. I checked the paintings again and again. The fog painting now had a curtain blowing through the open window, but the curtain looked familiar. Thin, translucent, torn at one edge. I walked to the bedroom. My window had one just like it. Same tip, same breeze. Except the window was closed. That's when I started looking closer. In the painting of the alley, the one I never liked, there was now a door on the left side of the frame. Same wood color, same proportions, same marks on the surface as the bedroom door I used every night. I opened my real door. He looked back at the painting. The door in the image was open too. Not wide, just enough to see that same narrow hallway I had passed through a dozen times since arriving. Except in the painting, there was something new at the end of the hall. A shape, motionless, low to the ground. I walked out of the room and checked the hallway in real life. Empty, same as always. But when I came back, that shape in the painting was gone. Now it showed a chair. My chair. The one from the kitchen with the broken leg I had repaired with a folded napkin. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Then I saw the painting of the fog again, and noticed that through the window in the image, I could see the alley. Not an alley, my alley. The exact one I could see from the real balcony. Same steps, same walls, same crack in the pavement. I stood there for a long time, breathing slowly, trying to make sense of it, trying not to move. Because it was becoming clear that the paintings weren't just changing. They were describing something, rearranging space. And if that was true, then I wasn't looking at art anymore. I was looking at a floor plan, a map. And somewhere in that map, someone was moving. I left the apartment the next morning. Didn't pack everything. Didn't message the host. I walked out with my backpack, left the keys on the table, and closed the door behind me without looking back. I told myself it was just paranoia, burnout, nothing that couldn't be solved by distance. I spent the next 3 nights at a business hotel near the beach. Modern place, fluorescent lights, neutral walls, no art, no personality. I felt better the first day. By the second, I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that wall of paintings. Not the images, the feeling of something coming closer. On the 3rd night, I opened the gallery on my phone, just to confirm I was overreacting. I had taken over 20 pictures during those days in the Airbnb, documenting each change, each small shift in the frames. I expected them to look harmless now, frozen, exposed, something I could finally delete. But most of them were corrupted, black squares, or blurry streaks of light. Except one, the last one. It was a photo I didn't remember taking. It showed the 4th painting, the staircase, but not from below like before. This time the image looked downward, like the viewer was already at the top. I enlarged the photo. There were more steps now, narrower, tighter, and something at the very bottom. A figure, standing still, head tilted up. I zoomed in further, slowly, carefully. The figure had no face, just outline, but the posture, the shape, was familiar. Too familiar. It was me.